Well, this is the period where we hang loose, and, you know, as I say all the time, it's no need of us saying hang loose. I haven't seen anybody in here this morning that wasn't loose a little bit. And if you're still kind of hung up...
The Reverend Cecil Williams freewheeling, jive-talking service may not be everybody's idea of religion, but it makes Glide Memorial United Methodist the most popular church in San Francisco any Sunday.
Reach out your hand, joy is passing by. Reach out your hand, joy is passing by. Reach out your hand, joy is passing by. Singing glory, hallelujah. Joy is passing, everybody now. Reach out your hand, joy is passing by. Reach out your hand.
CBS News presents Look Up and Live. Today, Many Mansions, a report on a unique ministry in San Francisco, California. The people going in are the Glide community. It includes all kinds of people, but the majority are not the people you generally see in church. They are street people, people against the system, people who feel left out and people who are left out. There are also people who just want to celebrate in their own way. Glide is their church. Glide gives them the way.
I come to you, the Glide community, and say emphatically that if you dig Glide, if you really dig Glide, if you're saying yes to Glide, to the people, to the community of Glide, then we better talk about a few things. And I want to get them over to you very strongly this morning. To dig Glide is to understand where Glide is at this time in history. And I want you to know where Glide is. I want to simply throw it out for you to digest. Now remember, I don't have any pills that I give people and say for you to take them, and from then on everything's going to be all right. I don't serve that kind of medicine. You know that. So I'm going to give you some nasty medicine this morning to digest. To dig Glide simply means that you understand and that we understand and that we groove with the fact that we are a people who believe in liberation, the liberation of prisoners, the liberation of the prisoners within the walls of the federal and state and city prisons, the liberation of prisoners in the ghettos of America, white, black, yellow, brown, all kinds of ghettos, the prisons of people's minds and the prisons of people's hearts. To dig Glide simply means that we're trying to break down those walls in the prisons, that we're trying to free people, we're trying to liberate women and children and men. You see, I put that women first. I know where my head is this morning. All right, come on, let's just sing "Oh, the Games People Play," because that's a really groovy number. Let's get with it. All right. Oh, the games people play now.
Glide Church is part of the Glide Foundation, whose modest-sized endowment is used in very unusual ways. Its goal, broadly speaking, is to change San Francisco, if not California and the western United States, for the better. Why change San Francisco? Because hidden within the city, you see, is another city, populated by people who are in some way different from most of us. People living out of the mainstream, unheard and unseen. Through countless dozens of projects, Glide is making this invisible city visible and bringing its people into the center stream of urban life. In the past 9 years, Glide has evolved strategies and projects which have become models in the broad struggle to give new life to America's cities.
If there's something that needs to be done in the city that nobody else will do, then maybe we ought to do it. I think, as an example, at the time, at the height of the flower children and the hip movement in San Francisco, there was an obvious need for some kind of institution for runaways. Nobody would touch it. We had a juvenile judge, or head of the juvenile court at that time, who was back in the 19th century and who wasn't particularly helpful and who had threatened anybody that tried to get into this field. So that the YW, the YM, the other agencies in the city were afraid to touch the runaway problem. So Glide decided that a runaway house, something separate from the police and from the juvenile court, needed to be established, and Huckleberry's was started, which has become a prototype for runaway houses all across the country. And sure enough, the entire house and staff were busted, and we had to get them out of jail, but we won that round. Well, now Huckleberry's is now known as Youth Advocates, and it's separately incorporated entirely on its own and getting funding from many sources. Glide still keeps an informal relationship to it, but where at one time we were the administrator and the starter of the project, it now is on its own. And I think this is partly this whole matter of seeding or starting operations and then helping them go on their own. I think we tend to emphasize things that young adults are doing, the new generation, as an endorsement factor, as really a kind of strategy of if young adults aren't helped to do things that are creative, they're going to turn to fairly destructive things or become very apathetic, and we feel that there's real need to help that, the new generation, so to speak. There are some limitations. I think, quite frankly, we don't help Communist Party activities. We've been burned, you might say, by the Socialist Workers' Party and the Progressive Labor Party particularly, and we tend to say, look, they've got their own possible sources of financing, we're not going to fuss with them. We tend to stay away from some of the other religions. We've had meditation centers and Buddhist groups and this kind of thing come to us for help, and our feeling is that religious movements ought to be able to get it together on their own. We tend to help those things that are more community-oriented. We tend to emphasize those things done by the young, particularly third world young. And I think we tend to emphasize those things that tend to form new styles of institutions, new ways of doing things, where they're actually providing new alternatives in our society. I think, in a sense, helping the society be more pluralistic.
There are few American cities with a greater reputation for social tolerance than San Francisco. Yet its large Asian population would not agree. The Chinese, Japanese, Filipinos, and Samoans living here have suffered from the same pattern of exclusion that has characterized white America's relations with blacks in the South and Mexican Americans in the Southwest. One of Glide's current efforts is the Asian Coalition, an organization designed to create a sense of common identity among Asians so that they can speak with more authority. The question of identity has reached crisis proportions among young people who are trying to upset the long-held view that all Asian Americans are docile and contented.
But how do you tell this to the outside people where they have all these stereotypes of us? How do you break these stereotypes?
I think part of the biggest problem is that, we ourselves have met the stereotypes that they give us. You see, and that the example of being passive, again, the impact of racism. Passive, cute little girls, and us gentlemen, man, kind of the laundryman image, the waiter, the waitress type of thing. I think the thing that really bothers me the most is really the impact of the racism in our community, and that we submerge our hurts, our fear, and this is why a lot of our people are not able to speak out and say how they or express what they really feel because of their fear. You know, what would happen to them? Would they lose their jobs? You know, would they lose their positions? And this is the sort of thing that we have to express to our people, you know, that you shouldn't be afraid, you know, be visible. And this is why, in some respect, we're not getting our part of the, you know, so-called war on poverty money. You know, part of it is that we don't let people know that we have problems.
But Tony, how can people come out feeling dignified and not afraid if all they can see is they're people of their own race being dishwashers, laundrymen, and not at any visible jobs that have any dignity? Employment has played such an important role in stereotyping the Asians.
So we went down and met with the United Bay Area Crusade Board about 2 weeks ago it was. And after we made a presentation to them, and there were lawyers, there were ministers, there were social workers and teachers and professional people there. And after we made a presentation, and the president stood up and he said, "Thank you for a very good presentation." And if it's sort of like a grade school class, you know, one student made a report and the teacher said, "Yeah, good little boy, you made a good report." And they weren't listening at all. You see, I was just wondering the dilemma of educating a larger community, how best we can do it, and whether in relationship to our own problems, you see, where is our priority? Where should we spend the time? Become a very serious problem.
Education comes on many levels. For example, if the President of the United States is not sensitive to his people, which is a large percentage is Orientals and Asians, his friend, Lieutenant Kelly, made such a terrible blow to the Asian community, because it showed to the Asian that he did not feel the Asians were people, right. That they had a right to kill the Asians. If they did that in Germany, it would be something else. But because they were Asians, Lieutenant Kelly was just very nicely dismissed. And that really angered a lot of Asians.
Well, you know, UAC, United Asian Community, in a sense, it's not just happening here in San Francisco. As I travel up and down the West Coast, in Seattle, you know, in Los Angeles and San Diego, you know, coalitions are building up. You know, the Asian American social workers are getting together. The Asian American clergymen are getting together. You see, there's something more important, something more urgent right now in our society than dealing with other privileged things like, transcendental religion or communes, or at point I get very turned off with ecology. You see, when there's so many people are really suffering, and people are tripping somewhere else.
We read in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, there are many kinds of service, but the same Lord. And there are different ways of working, but the same God inspires all of them. For all of us participating in this revolutionary community, there is but one common task which should engage our various gifts, many kinds of services, and different ways of working. Our chairman Jesus, in Luke chapter 4, calls us to participate with him in this task, to preach good news to the poor, recovering of sight to the blind, recovering of sight for those blinded by the disease of racism, so they can clearly see both the oppressed and the oppressor here and in all parts of the world. And
The Bible as a revolutionary message. Jesus as the chairman of the revolution. The style of the Glide community is not only revolutionary, but revolution-minded. Although for most people here, revolution is no more than a hip word for social change. Glide is a catalyst for people who want to reject the system but have found no alternative. Through Glide, people find alternatives in projects or simply in the company of others who feel and think as they do.
I went down to L.A. weekend before last, and a girl on the plane who was a Vista volunteer named Heather, and she said that glide was too relevant.
The idea of revolutionary alternatives is even enjoying some government sanction. The Peace Corps has contracted with Glide to provide a much-needed transition process for volunteers returning home. The Transition Center project offers volunteers some answers to the biggest question in their mind. Shall I join the system or the revolution?
Yeah, but what kind of worries me is that you keep hearing talk that no one wants to work with the system at all, and we can have a commune, pretend like it doesn't exist, and just let the whole thing go on. I don't know. I think some of us are going to have to say, okay, yeah, we're going to go and put up with it for a while.
Conflict in the youth values today, because some of them get politically oriented and other people get spiritually oriented with Hindu religion, with the Hindu trips or the Hare Krishna or whatever. And people go off to the rural communes and start farming. And they say they don't want anything to do with politics and just let the world come to them. But for a lot of people, they don't have that choice to be able to do that.
When you opt out of the system like that, you do more to hurt it than you do. You know, the system now, I think, thrives off non-involvement by the mass of the people. And so if you run off to West Virginia and live on Big Rock Candy Mountain, you know, you leave a smaller number of people a greater opportunity to dominate.
If you're in the system, don't you think that in a way you're just supporting it? You know, you're allowing.
No, I don't.
That depends on what you do while you're in the system. I mean,
But just by being in there,
physically present.
You're right. You're perpetuating it because it's bringing more and more people in there who are out on the fringes.
Or translating the system to people who can't, who don't really understand it. For example, what we all did in Latin America or around the world in all the countries we were in. No matter what you say, we were representing the United States and a lot of the values that it had.
That sounds to me sort of like, I mean, that's the old theory. Don't do anything because then you're holding off the revolution and everything. Well, I'm tired of hearing that because there's certain people who need things right now, and
probably most of us, just by our influence and the kinds of things you'll do, you'll probably bring in a lot more social change in a long-term sense than by going out and, you know, throwing rocks, burning buildings, all this kind of stuff, just because of the kinds of things you'll get into.
You have to make a decision. It's really funny. If you look at it like you said, Bill, what do? Do you make a decision? Should I go buy a loaf of bread and feed a poor, hungry person right now, or do I refuse to buy that loaf of bread because the guy who owns the bread factory also is connected with a firm that builds rockets and MERS? And you know, I don't know. You know, do you let the kids starve or do you buy the bread? You have to weigh at some point in time. You know where it is you're going. Transition Center may be about that decision-making process.
I got life, Mother. I got laughs, sister. I got freedom, brother. I got good times, man. I got crazy ways, daughter. I got $1 million charm, cousin. I got headaches and toothaches and bad times too, like you. I got my hair. I got my head. I got my brains. I got my ears. I got my eyes. I got my teeth. I got my tongue. I got my chin. I got my neck. I got my skin. I got my heart. I got my soul. I got my back. I got my sex. I got my arms. I got my hands. I got my fingers. I got my legs. I got my feet. I got my toes. I got my liver. I got my blood. I got my guts. I got my muscles. I got life, 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 life. She pays $125.
The Reverend Edward Peet, minister to older citizens, is another member of Glide's revolutionary ministry. With his young assistant, Charles Clay, Dr. Peet has formed a highly motivated, highly vocal organization of older people called the California Legislative Council for Older Americans. They have proposed a coordinated legislative program, and they are taking it to the government and to the people. It provides property tax relief based on income, rent control in private housing, and the best medical care available, among other things. At this demonstration, the issue is rent control.
Only people that are left, kick them out. This is not just the elderly or poor people's problem. This is the entire San Francisco citizenry issue. And I do hope you people come and...
The success of so many GLIDE efforts is tied to the sense of community GLIDE creates. Young people, black, white, and Asian, are on this picket line. Just as surely there will be elderly people walking on GLIDE picket lines for them another day.
My name is Tom Maurer. I've been an ordained minister for 28 years, and I've been in the United Church of Christ for the last 24 or 5 years. And I came out here to direct the Institute for Sex Research, or what you know as the Kinsey Institute, study of homosexuality, which is the...
Tom Maurer is part of GLIDE's boldest project to date, the National Sex and Drug Forum. As a consultant to the recent National Commission on Sex and Pornography, the NSDF made public some startling revelations about the American view of sex. Specifically, that many professionals, doctors, psychiatrists, clergymen, and sociologists, those people to whom the public must turn with a sex problem, know little or nothing about sex. The principal tool of NSDF seminars are its films. This one is called Unfolding. The National Sex and Drug Forum has subsequently become one of the country's few reputable sex study and therapy centers, offering its services to medical schools and other professional organizations around the nation.
Well, now you've seen some of the films, I think you have a little the idea why we use so much multimedia. We find in using these films, and incidentally, sometimes we will have 3 films being projected here at once during the seminar, across the front here, and sometimes slides on either side of that, until people often scream for mercy. And they're satiated with sex films. Now you say, what's the reason for doing it? It isn't pornography. The reason to do it is so that you will say what you're thinking. We don't want to reach the last hour of the seminar and then suddenly have you get honest with your inhibitions down and you start talking about what you're really thinking and feeling. So we're non-judgmental. We don't moralize. How you use sex is your business. And we feel the key word in our culture towards sex through the centuries has been constraint, you know, and it, well, like anything else in life, it really ought to be proficiency.
I just want you to know that we're moving now to a new level. And this is why last Sunday I called for this to become a wailing wall. That we're going to remove from the front out there, the words United Methodist Church, Glide Methodist Church. We're going to put the words a wailing wall for all peoples out there. You hear me? Because what I want you to know that a wailing wall has certain characteristics. It means that all people can come and ooh and ah and grunt and say ooh-wee, and all people can come and cry and moan. But also it means that people can come and vent their hostile feelings and their anger and not get frightened and threatened by it. It means that no matter what we have on our insides, the wailing wall is here to receive it. The third thing the wailing wall must be is a platform for the voiceless people, for the people who cannot be heard in the community and in the city. And so the wailing wall must be a platform. We must amplify their needs and their demands and their claims to the world, yea, even to the community. We must be those kind of people who are not afraid to let all kinds of groups come here and speak out. Let them do their thing as it relates to the human qualities, as it relates to the repression that comes in their lives. So I say to you, let the wailing wall be a platform for all peoples. But finally, brothers and sisters, hear me now. Let the wailing wall take the people and push them back out into the world. Let the wailing wall say to all men that apathy is the worst thing that can happen to men. Let the wailing wall say to all women, don't be nonchalant. Get up and fight for your rights. Let the wailing wall say to the children, save this country, children. Save the people. Let the wailing wall be open to all possibilities. Let all men and women and children know that we, the people, we the people will liberate mankind with that which comes to us in the one called Jesus of Nazareth. And because he was a revolutionary, I too feel that we must be that revolutionary group which says to all mankind, free at last! Free at last! Great God Almighty, we are free at last!
It is difficult to judge a phenomenon like Glide. A leading San Francisco columnist has half-jokingly called it Saint Relevance. Perhaps he hasn't made up his mind either. People love it, people hate it, many distrust it, but one cannot ignore it. Glide is too many different things to too many different people to measure broadly. Perhaps the one thing that can be said is that Glide has helped people and has shown others how they can do the same. That may be quite enough.
CBS News has presented Look Up and Live. Today, Many Mansions, a report on a unique ministry in San Francisco, California.
Hey, brother. Good to see you, man. Hello, Cecil. Hello, Cecil. Uh-oh.